Hi Advocates, it's Julienne and Edwards, your Grassroots Advocacy Manager at FightCRC. With me is our Policy Consultant, Molly McDonald. We're here at Winning Strategies Washington, and today we're going to talk to you about in-person meetings. Now, we're going to have a whole bunch of these at the end of March at Call on Congress, but that's not the only time that you can meet with your representative in person. You can meet in their district, in your district rather. You can come to Washington, you can make an appointment to meet with your representative really at any time. So these tips and this video will be applicable far beyond March, so just keep that in mind. So in-person meetings. Molly, you've been a health staffer, you've taken these meetings. They're very, it's very impactful to sit in person in an office and share your story. But as a health staffer, what makes it impactful to you?
Yeah, so I think, in all of these meetings, something that I would always start with is asking them where they're from. So making that connection to the district and to understand, where they're speaking from. Then I always let folks tell their story. I think it's incredibly powerful to hear from people who are impacted by the bills that we are passing or not passing and the things that we're funding or not funding. It's easy as a staffer on the Hill to get bogged down in are your I's dotted and your T's crossed and sort of the technical language of a bill. But to be able to sort of pull back and zoom out and realize and see, in front of you, this is what it means in practice, is incredibly powerful and incredibly valuable for members and their staff.
Yeah, it moves it out of the realm of, this is a theoretical intellectual exercise to this really impacts people's lives.
Yeah, it's more than a piece of paper.
Exactly. So if I'm going into a meeting with a member, what can I expect?
Yeah, so to be honest, it could vary. So some members, most members, all members really have incredibly busy and sort of erratic schedules that they are mostly not the boss of. So they're pulled, into committee hearings, into votes, and those things are unfortunately not scheduled in advance. It just happens. So a member may only be able to give you just a couple of minutes, and it's quick hello, introductions, maybe take a quick photo, and then they're running out the door. So I wouldn't take any offense to that because it's just the nature of things, and to get any FaceTime with a member is still great. Yeah. And so that won't mean that your meeting will only last that amount of time. So typically, they'll say their hellos, and then they'll pass it on to the health staffer. So that's when you have the time to really get down to business. And a lot of times those meetings are sometimes even more fruitful because you're sitting with someone who's the subject matter expert and who has a little bit more time than the member to drill down on your specific issue.
Great, yeah. And so if you're meeting with a staffer, you make a good connection, you have a fruitful discussion, what does that translate into after that meeting? Yeah,
so I think this sort of picks up on, how the course of the meeting goes. I think obviously it's incredibly important to tell your story, but then it's almost even more important to connect your story to your legislative ask. So following the meeting, typically a staff is going to go back and put together a memo on what occurred in that meeting. So who they met with, what their story was, and what their asks were. And that, in some cases may include a recommendation one way or the other of what the member should do. But so being able to say, this is my story, and this is why this legislation that you've been working on or that you've seen, that's why that piece of paper is so important. And drawing that connection is what really drives it home.
Okay. So if I am, I meet with you, I share my story, I make the ask, on the back end, does that get to the member? Does that influence them, or does that kind of just percolate with the staffer?
Yeah, so I think that most staff do report to their member about the meetings that they've taken. So even if you don't have the opportunity to directly say to your member, your story and your asks, it will eventually get to them. And another way that you can help ensure that is by following up after the meeting. So it's obviously incredibly important to do the meeting itself, but then after you, that staffer will probably have 12 other meetings. So it's important to, and a couple weeks later, follow up and say, you know, I enjoyed meeting you, I thank you for taking the time, and I wanted to check in on XYZ things that we talked about. And again, that's making sure that it's staying at the top of their stack, and you're continuing to build that relationship and that rapport with that office.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think it's worth pointing out that, you know, staffers understand that, you know, it's not easy for everybody to come to Washington and to share their story. You know, it's not something that they take lightly. And so so that impact really can't be undervalued, and also that follow-up of really just not only coming in once, but calling, emailing, and following up in those in-person meetings and saying, just wanted to remind you that I'm here and this is still a really important thing.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how it is not lost on members and their staff what it takes to come to Washington, D.C. and to tell your story. I'm sure there's a million other things you'd rather be doing, and you are, you know, taking time off of work, maybe taking time away from treatment, taking time away from being with your family, and, you know, schlepping around the halls of Congress all day. You know, it's not easy. And so the fact that folks are willing to take that time and make that effort to do it is really powerful.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this series of videos. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me. My email will be linked in the description of this video. And also, don't forget to register to be a virtual advocate if you're not already registered to come to Call on Congress. And we look forward to all of your advocacy efforts in the future. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, guys.